Any hope of an end to Rwanda's cycle of ethnic violence was dashed after the massacre of Hutu refugees at Kibeho refugee camp in southwest Rwanda. United Nations officials claim that about 2,000 died, but aid workers on the ground say the figure is nearer 5,000. The killing came after the Tutsi-led government moved to eradicate refugee camps on Rwandan soil, which provided shelter for over 250,000 Hutus. They included some of those believed to be responsible for last year's genocide in Rwanda, where up to 1 million Tutsis were killed. Witnesses described the Rwandan Patriotic Army troops rampaging through Kibeho, shooting, bayoneting, and throwing grenades. Most people died in the stampede that followed the shooting. Now the survivors have to deal with the horror of what they witnessed. Aid workers have described what they found. Crushed women and children, men with their faces blown off, and children ripped apart by grenades. The RPA moved in on Kibeho a week before the massacre, despite UN objections. The killing began after soldiers surrounded the camp. Panicked refugees fled to a neighboring hillside and then tried to break out of an RPA cordon. Soldiers opened fire into the crowd. The Tutsis have achieved their aim of closing all the 9 refugee camps in Rwanda. By the end of April, up to 1,000 refugees were still holed up in Kibeho camp, refusing to move. Government soldiers had cut off their food and water supplies. There are over 2 million Hutu refugees scattered in camps in neighboring countries like Zaire. In the camps around Goma in eastern Zaire, there are about 750,000 refugees. Although conditions are far from ideal, they're a lot better than in the former camps inside Rwanda. The refugees and the international aid agencies have tried to create some sort of ordered daily existence in a situation that could have easily deteriorated into squalid chaos. It's not been an easy task and has taken some time and effort. But for the moment at least, things seem to work.
Basically, the camps community and camps population is pretty well organized. They have their prefecture, and the prefecture they have their community, and community they have their cells, and we are working through leaders of all those structures on a daily basis. Once a week we have a meeting with all community leaders, and through UNHCR, United Nations High Commission of Refugees, the registration of camp population. It took us somewhat around from 2 to 3 weeks. Now we know exactly the number of refugees. We know exactly the number of families. They're all registered, they all have registration cards. And the community leaders and cell leaders, they received exactly amount of food per person, per day, depending on the quantity of the number of people.
But an extremely critical shortage of food supplies is threatening to destabilize life in the camps. Since the beginning of this year, the Rwandan authorities have made it increasingly difficult for the World Food Programme to transport food through Gisenyi near the Zairean border to Goma. Alternative routes are long and arduous, and existing food stocks in the camps are drying up fast. Some 52,900 tons of food a month are needed for the feeding programs in the region. At a recent meeting with donors in Rome, WFP has said that $350 million are necessary this year for food and essential operations in the camps. So far, less than half has been pledged by donors. The food shortage has become so serious that rations to refugees in Goma have been cut to only 986 kcals a day, compared to the 1,900 minimum needed by the average person. Rations could be cut still further.
People will get roughly 1/4 or 1/3 of food they require. So it might create in the long run, in 4 or 5 weeks from now, we are expecting the increase of malnutrition rates, particularly among vulnerable groups of population, children, lactating mothers, elderly. These are those groups and categories of people who will suffer most.
Aid agencies fear that reduced food rations could spark tensions in the camps and cause serious security problems. Some refugees claim that people are already dying.
En fait, Here, the Red Cross only gives us a quarter of the full ration of food. And because of that, children are dying of hunger. Women and elderly become weak, and mothers with babies don't produce enough milk.
Rations can be supplemented by some crop growing in the camps, but any local production will stop in the next few weeks at the onset of the dry season. In an attempt to encourage refugees to return to Rwanda, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN has been helping farmers restore livestock and crop production. Rwandan farmers are harvesting their first food crop since last year's fighting. But refugees were still fearful of returning home even before the latest atrocities.
It is true that, I would say, the majority of the refugee leaders or leadership keep the population here by telling them that if they return, it is dangerous. Not necessarily direct, violent intimidation. Intimidation still, definitely. Spreading rumors, which is a very good tool as well. But one of the best tools is to create chaos inside Rwanda. So you have several ways of doing it. You increase incursions from Zaire into Rwanda, so that you kill a few persons. Tension rises. It makes the Rwandese authorities more nervous. And if you want to say, it is a sort of vicious circle. The government of Rwanda should officially at all levels, and at the field level also, not only at the level of the capital in Kigali, but at the field level, sort of come up more openly also, and they should confirm again their will to welcome the refugees back, the innocent refugees back.